The following is brought to you by GFL Ag. Next thing you know the next thing. Next is Now is a short podcast discussing agriculture's emerging next-gen tech and trends as they're happening in our industry. Next is Now, presented by GFL Ag. Listen where you get your podcasts today.
Good day, and welcome to Wheat Pete's Word here on Real Agriculture for Wednesday, March the 20th. On this episode of The Word, gracious gifts. Thank you so much. Wheat Pete has made it, man. People are starting to believe. Practical realities, get out in the field, have a look, and agronomic answers. Lots of questions coming in, which is awesome. Keep them coming. I'll answer as many as I can before I run out of time at the end. Let's go. Thank you so much. So Wheat Pete goes to a meeting in Mount Forest. He's sitting in his truck as he gets there, doing some texting because, try to not text on the road. Don't text on the road. And all of a sudden there's a knock on the window, and I look, and here is Willard holding a jug of maple syrup for Wheat Pete right out of the blue. Such a gracious gift. Willard, thank you so very much. It's awesome maple syrup, and everybody knows Wheat Pete loves maple syrup. Then we get to Twitter, to X, and oh my gosh, Greg Stops, Pioneer agronomist, Corteva, right? Pioneer, corn, soybeans. They do wheat as well, but corn is really the king and soybeans are queen. And Greg tweets out that he's drunk the Wheat Pete Kool-Aid, that wheat is just awesome. And Adam Pfeffer from Bayer, again, Bayer called corn, soybeans, and Adam saying, yep, even I am excited about wheat. Oh my gosh, Wheat Pete has absolutely made it. How could life be better than getting corn people to say that wheat rocks? That's just amazing. And meanwhile, Curtis Farms tweeting out a great picture here just this morning, Wednesday, March the 20th. We've had the warm weather. We had Nature Nutmeg get some oats seeded into dry soil back in late February. But this is Dufferin County, different climate, and Curtis Farms out frost seeding oats this morning, just going in beautiful. Sent a little video on Twitter, and no mud anywhere. The frost carrying the tractor, carrying the drill, but the drill able to slice those oats through the ground and get them in. And man, that is just it just makes me smile, makes my heart warm, because I know that's a good process and probably will do just amazing for you. So awesome from that perspective. Thanks for doing all those things, by the way. It makes Wheat Pete's whole week 100%. Meanwhile, the OECD, so this is really interesting. The OECD sent a tweet out saying that 20% of all the calories consumed in the world on this globe cross an international border. And you stop and think about that. 1/5 of all the food gets exported out of one country into another country. That's a massive amount. But I want to put it just into a little bit of perspective, because the way it hit my brain was, if we go back even into the mid-1800s, 1850s, 1860s, in Europe, one valley could have a bountiful harvest, and just a few miles away, the next valley that's got, some mountains in between or whatever, it's not distance-wise that far, they could be starving because they simply had a crop failure, and we didn't have that infrastructure to work together as a global community. And so this international trade in food really is a great example of the international community working together. And yes, it's profit oriented, and you can say lots of things, but isn't it too bad that we couldn't all work together better and have this whole system work better and not have all the incredible strife we have in the world? Oh my gosh, I cannot imagine. It drives me crazy that those things happen. And hopefully someday we can kind of take this food model and we can make it work better and get away from all the negatives that are out there. I don't want this to be a negative podcast because I'm in a really good mood, but wow, 1/5 of the world's calories go across an international border, and that to me just is great cooperation and collaboration, and knowledge travels the globe. It's just, there's lots of great stuff from that perspective, and it's such a difference than it is just 150 years ago, or maybe even less than 100 years ago in some parts of the world. All right, I want to move on. Hey, gocrops.ca. So you used to hear me talk about gocereals.ca, about gocorn.net. All of the crops, wheat, barley, oats, corn, soybeans, even edible beans, I believe, are now going to be up on the gocrops.ca website. The Grain Farmers of Ontario have driven this process, and what I would like you to do, because it just went live, and we've tested it to some degree, but man, for those of you who have a few minutes, go to gocrops.ca and run through things that you want to do there. If there are problems, now is the time for us to find them, because that means that we can fix them before you need that data next August for winter wheat, and December rather for corn, soybeans, spring cereals, all those things. So get there, have a look, and let us know if you find any problems or what you would like changed, because that system is developing, and we will do it the best we can from that perspective. Here's another quick note. March 31st is rapidly coming up. That's 11 days away as of today. The Ontario Ag Conference sessions are available. The recordings are there. There's 60 recordings. You only have till March 31st to watch them. Do not ask for an extension. It's funny. We tweeted this out. Dr. Dave Hooker says, yeah, my students are coming to me lots now and saying, may I have an extension, please? And the answer is, if we extend it, you'll just procrastinate. Nope, we're not extending it. Get there, watch those sessions. There's so many great sessions to watch there. Get through as many as you can. Hey, Owen sending me a great note saying, Peter, remind the people, now is the time. Tile drainage. It's such a critical part of the infrastructure here in Ontario. I gave a presentation to Dr. Dave's class in Ridgetown on Tuesday, I think it was. No, Monday, actually. Monday. But Owen is so right. Get out there. Check your outlets. Check your inlets. And for goodness sakes, look for wet spots in last year's winter wheat fields that should not be there, because we know that high yield wheat will plug tile when we get really dry grain fill periods. Last year, from early May till late June, many areas had almost no rainfall, and yet we had the second highest wheat yields ever. That means there's a chance their wheat roots got in the tile. If you see a wet spot, get it fixed now so that it's not a wet spot when you go to plant in late April or early May. And, you can say, don't grow wheat because it plugs tile. No, give that up, man. We need high-yield wheat. We need wheat in the rotation because of all the amazing benefits it does. And as my great tile drainage contractor, Ken McCutcheon, would say, we get the odd plug. It is way more benefits than detriments. Just get out there, find them, get them fixed so they don't plug again, and move on from there. Hey, Wes saying, Peter, you talked about rolling alfalfa last week, and I had a great discussion with my neighbor who's a dairy farmer who always rolls his alfalfa, and I said to him that, the agronomics, you're hard on the crown, and he said, well, you know what? My custom operator that harvests all my hay forage for me absolutely will not harvest that crop if you don't roll it in the spring to push those rocks in, because he's not going to ruin his harvesting equipment. Okay, so the reality is that practicalities trump agronomics at this point. Roll the alfalfa. If the crown isn't pushed up out of the ground, you probably don't damage it much. But it really doesn't, from agronomically, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But from a practical equipment standpoint, yep, roll that alfalfa. What can I say? Paul giving me a nice bunch of text discussion. My great friend Paul Sullivan from the Ottawa Valley, Renfrew area, and he's saying, okay, Peter, we've been growing our winter wheat acres, and the wheat looks great for the most part. And now we've got 3 nights in a row forecast at minus 10 Celsius, the wind chill at minus 18, no snow whatsoever. What's the chances? And so it's really an interesting thought process. So first off, don't forget that crown, the growing point, is still 3/4 of an inch in the ground. And by the way, it will stay there longer than you think. We did green up in February and early March in most of the province, but wheat is day length sensitive, and so even though it greened up, the growing point doesn't immediately, it's vernalized, so that means it will head out now. We have to have that cold period to get it to change from the vegetative stage to the reproductive stage. It's had that, but it still has a day length component, so it's still going to stay vegetative for at least a little while longer, so that growing point hasn't started to move yet. And the other interesting thing about wheat, and this is Jamie Larson's PhD project at University of Guelph. Jamie is now an edible bean breeder at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada in Harrow, but he did his PhD on wheat. This is a good crop. Wheat can reacclimate if it gets 3 days of temperatures. So what that means is, if we had gone from plus 20 to minus 10, that's a bad thing. But because we went from plus 20, and then we've had a week, basically, of temperatures around 0, plus 5, minus 3, whatever those temperatures were, but it's been cold again. And so after 3 days, the plant actually hardens up a little bit. It doesn't go totally dormant. It doesn't totally harden off, but it does increase the salt concentrations in the cells, or some mechanism where it again gets more cold tolerant. And because we've been able to reacclimate, the chances are that we can probably take minus 9 at the crown. And Paul, your temperatures are minus 10. The wind chill actually doesn't matter a lot. It will maybe drive that minus 10 into the soil a little bit more, but not a whole lot more, particularly if you have big wheat, and that big wheat is protecting that soil from that wind. So it would take more than minus 10 to get to minus 9 at the crown. I really think we're okay from that perspective. And as you all know, we got to kill a wheat crop 9 times before it actually dies. So what is this, about time 4? I don't know. Anyway, I think it's fine. I hope I'm right. And let's move on and get into some of the agronomic answers. So a whole bunch of people keep firing questions to me about split nitrogen. Warren, Dave, Gord, Jan. So absolutely, split nitrogen is a good idea whenever we can do it. We're pushing a little bit early. The demand is small, but to get a small shot and apply that sulfur, really, the sulfur isn't going to disappear, and a low amount of nitrogen just supports some of those tillers from that standpoint. And so something, less than 50 pounds of total nitrogen, put on your 15 or 20 pounds of sulfur. I actually think Gord had a good approach. He was going to put on 40, 0, 0, 15 sometime in the next couple of weeks if he got the chance on either the last frost, not on snow, but the last frost, or if we get that dry period, and then come back in late April with the big shot. I still think that's not a bad strategy, particularly now that we're right close to the tail end of May. But it does beg the question, what about on big wheat? And so Aaron out of Wisconsin saying, Pete, what do I do? Oh my gosh, I normally have about 70 stems per square foot. Right now, I have between 100 and 130 stems per square foot. And I'd like to put my sulfur on early, but I'm not so sure I want too much nitrogen. How do I manage the nitrogen in that particular stand? And Dr. Dave actually challenging Wheat Pete, saying, oh, hey, Pete, didn't you do some work on big wheat and trying to starve off some of the tillers? So delaying that nitrogen application. And this actually comes from Graham Jones. Graham Jones is an agronomist in New Zealand, and he worked with Mike Solaris. Yes, Mike Solaris, who was the world record wheat holder back in 2012 or something like that. And when they have too many tillers in New Zealand, they delay nitrogen application until the wheat goes as yellow as your phone book. And we, of course, don't have phone books anymore, but if you can remember how yellow a phone book was, man, if I looked at a field of wheat like that, I would say, oh, this is bad. And yes, Dr. Dave, Shane and I did those trials, and when we have really big wheat and we think we have too many tillers, we can delay nitrogen application right up until second node. And in our trials, only one location did we ever lose yield by delaying that nitrogen application. But we never once increased yield by delaying that nitrogen application. And putting that information together now with our yen data that says stems per square foot are incredibly important for high yield, and then putting it together with Shane and my and Dr. Dave and Jocelyn Selski's nitrogen uptake data, I'm no longer, in our short growing season rather, I am simply not going to try to starve off tillers. So, Aaron, I think that getting your sulfur on and maybe up to 30, 40 pounds of nitrogen is an okay strategy in that situation. We don't want too much there because it will increase the lodging potential, but I'm not going to try to starve off tillers, and then we're going to come back in kind of somewhere between growth stage 31 and 32 and put the big shot on, or growth stage 30 and 32, put that big shot on. We're going to try and maintain that 110, 120 heads per square foot, but then standability does become an issue, so we may need to look at a plant growth regulator to do that. That's sort of where Johnson is on that. Jason saying, hey, Peter, you talked about nitrogen loss from early applications. What about pure yield? Because the pure yield is coated, poly-coated, and it's going to delay the release of that nitrogen. Now my soils are warmer. Do I get more loss? No, Jason, we don't think so. I mean, it is possible, but it's not very likely, because pure yield, or ESN, the poly-coated ureas, it's moisture and temperature. So the moisture component means that to get it to release, we need some moisture. Most of the time when we get that moisture and the temperature is right, we get enough moisture to have that urea that gets released out of that granule moved into the soil. If it's in the soil, we don't have loss. So don't worry about that too much. And Clay from New York State saying, Peter, it's winter barley. I'm harvesting it as forage at soft dough stage. What do I do? We've got an early start. Do I get my nitrogen and sulfur on immediately? Man, if you want forage, so if you have rye or triticale that you are harvesting at flag leaf stage, then you need early nitrogen and sulfur. You want to promote as much vegetative growth as you can. So the demand is small now, but I want my application as early as I can get it, as soon as I get that green up and that growth really started. It's not quite yet, but it's close. And in New York State, it might be even closer. So yes, get it there. Although winter barley at dough stage, now you're a little bit later, so not quite as much urgency, but winter barley does grow faster than winter wheat. You cannot wait too long, that's for sure. Dang, I'm running out of time. Manure on wheat. Both Paul and Jared talking about manure on wheat. Paul sending a great picture where he just ran up the field with a few loads of dry manure. Oh, that wheat looks so much better. Yes, manure on wheat can work, but application uniformity is always brutal. And why is it better? It's just better because we have so many good things that come out of that manure. It doesn't surprise me at all, but you still have to manage the nitrogen, particularly if you're going to try and use manure as your nitrogen source. And that's mainly because it's so hard to get uniform application. Never more than 2/3 of your nitrogen out of the manure. And if it's fall manure, that gets even dicier to count very much on that manure. And just while we're at that, Kevin asking about sulfur from manure. In my experience, wheat's demand is so early, winter wheat in Ontario, where we've taken the plunge and said, no, we've got lots of turkey manure, we've got lots of hog manure, we don't need sulfur. I've been burnt twice. I'm no longer there. 10 pounds of sulfur on the wheat crop as sulfate. I think it's cheap insurance. And when you go to sulfur deficient, boy, you can lose yield big from that standpoint. Last but not least, this phosphorus discussion continues on Twitter. Lots of great discussions there. Hey, agronomists, this coming Monday night is going to be on phosphorus fertilizers and starter fertilizers, and so we'll do a better job of answering that. But there was a good discussion just around that, and when it comes to phosphorus availability, there's just not really good data to say that there is differences in availability that matter to the plant, unless we get maybe at really high or low pHs. And even then, I'm not so sure. And Eric, there's a great tweet thread that Eric, my neighbor Eric Dietrich, good friend, phosphorus, and looking at different sources, and a plot being set with a 21 bushel per acre yield difference. And you just go, whoa. Like that, the data was there. The data is the data, but you just got to question, was there tile drainage that affected that, or what was going on? Because we typically would never see those kind of differences. Anyway, join us on The Agronomist. We'll have more discussion about that. That will be fun. With that, I am way over time. That's it. That's all. On behalf of the team here at Real Agriculture, this is Wheat Pete with the word for Wednesday, March the 20th. Hey, keep the questions coming, and I'll keep talking for too long. See you next week.